Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, a very special episode with a very special guest, Eyong, a journalist from Cameroon, West Africa, from where he became a political exile for criticizing the government. He is the author of the new novel, The Vision of the Blind King. Ako, what an honor and privilege to have you on the Glazov Gang.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Welcome to the program. I just finished your novel last week. Congratulations. Just a fascinating, very profound piece of work. And we're going to tell our viewers about it and I hope we can get to several of its very profound themes. But you also have a very fascinating, profound story which involves the love of the United States of America. Let's begin a little bit with your background and also why you are here in this country and why you treasure and cherish this country so much.
You know, living in Cameroon, growing up in Cameroon, a country that is a dictatorship, Cameroon has had two presidents from 1960 up to present date. The first guy was there from 1960 to 1982. And the next president has been there since 1982, and he's still president. And so, of course, it's a dictatorship, and there is a lot of mismanagement. And by the time I graduated from college, the country was in terrible confusion, you know, and I became a journalist/cartoonist, and I was submitting my cartoons to, you know, the country's biggest English privately owned paper. And the government did not find these cartoons funny. I felt very threatened at a particular point, had to get out of my own country using a false passport. And I'm very, very grateful that the United States government came to my rescue. And I am here as a political exile. So with this background, it is very, very easy for me to appreciate how beautiful things are here, how free things are. You know, people can speak and say whatever they think. It is not like that in other parts of the world. So the kind of freedom that I have experienced in America is like nothing that I have experienced before. You know?
Thank you, Ako, and I think you and I find common ground there because, you know, my family and I myself are from the Soviet Union, from a totalitarian regime. So people like you and I, we really treasure this country in terms of freedom and being able to say what you think and not being afraid, you know, of these vile totalitarian forces. Ako, what do you think of the forces of the left and also around the world, whether it be Islamic Jihad or, like I said, socialists, how they hate the United States of America? What do you think about the people also in America that don't appreciate America and want to change it?
I think that those people have to be aware of the fact that America is a symbol of greatness in a lot of ways. The freedom that is expressed here, the liberty that is expressed here. And those who hate America to such an extent have to rethink. But it is also important to mention the fact that America is not perfect. There is no perfect nation on earth. You know, they have their own mistakes, they have their own problems. And sometimes some of those problems are some of the things that push people to develop such a great hatred for America. But I kind of look at it kind of like somebody saying that we should destroy McDonald's. I don't think it's a good way to go, because McDonald's is a perfect distribution system. All we need to do is change the quality of food that is being sent out. Imagine what would happen if McDonald's was distributing vegetarian food. It would be awesome. But then if we destroy McDonald's, it's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So well, I think America is an amazing country, but of course it just needs to be tweaked.
Well, this is the thing. We have to make, you know, perhaps capitalism work more effectively, but you don't want to overthrow a system based on private property and freedom and replace it with tyranny, right? And that's what many of our totalitarian enemies want to do. Ako, you fit in many of these themes very, very profoundly into your work, The Vision of the Blind King. And there's a lot of metaphor and fascinating allegory in your novel. And one of your strong themes is the warning about nations leaving God and turning to greed. And we see, for instance, arguably this happening in the United States. It is obvious that you're also speaking from the place that you perhaps are from. Can you speak about that? Because I think that this is a very powerful theme in your book and is a theme very close to your heart about when nations leave God.
I think it's very, very important for nations to stay close to God. Everything comes from God, you know. And the human conscience is from a very spiritual place. God is basically the line in the sand where it's like, do not cross. You can do this and you cannot do that. You know, God basically gives us a guideline on how to go about living our lives. Now, when people decide that they do not want God anymore in their lives, it is when they get to a place where they want everything to be acceptable. I'll give you an example. Take 2 houses or 2 apartments, brand new, and you decide that in apartment A, everything is allowed. In apartment B, you can do this, you cannot do that, you cannot write on the walls, you cannot, you know what I mean? Now, put tenants in there and come back in 10 years. The apartment where everything is allowed will be totally trashed. And the apartment where you have rules would definitely be in a much better state of things. So basically, that is how it is. People do not want God for the most part because they do not want to be told what to do. And to me, I think it's pride, and it does not usually lead in the right place, because when God is out of the picture, there is spiritual corruption. When spiritual corruption sets in, we are all people. When we're spiritually corrupt, every decision we make, whether it's political, whether it's economic or sociocultural, comes from this foundation of spiritual corruption, and so it just goes across the board.
And Echo, you are a Christian?
I am a Christian.
And you would therefore also, I'm asking, emphasize that therefore it's important for nations to stick closely with the 10 Commandments and with morality in that sense.
I think it is important, but I believe that as a Christian, somebody asked Jesus Christ a question. He said, there are so many rules in the Bible. How would you summarize this whole thing? And Jesus Christ said, the most important rule is what has been referred to as the golden rule. He said, love your neighbor like yourself.
Thank you, Echo, and amen to that. And that leads me into my next theme that I want to ask you about, because there's a part in your book, in your novel, directly connected to this. When the king lost his wife Sarah, and he had a dream of her in the afterlife, and she came to him in that dream, and she informed him that the real life starts in the afterlife, and that this is actually just a dream.
Yeah.
But why I want to ask you about that is that later one of her messages was also to treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
But let's rewind for a minute. Why is that in your novel? Why is that so important to you? And what did you mean by that the afterlife is this is actually that, like, I'm asking if that's part of your belief system as well, because I think it may be that, because you're very much against greed and materialism, and so you're stressing that maybe we should build up for the afterlife rather than thinking that everything is so important here in terms of material wealth. Tell me about that scene that you worked on in your novel.
It's a scene that you know, it's a great general of an army, and his wife dies in the fire, and so he becomes very traumatized by it, and he turns to alcohol. You know, but down the line, she appears to him in a dream in which she is telling him that, listen, you do not have to be so worried. Everything that happens here is just a dream. Everything passes away. We are just here to learn particular lessons. We are here to learn how to live with other people. We are here to learn how to format our character. Because I, as a Christian, I believe, of course, that there is life after death. You know, it is hard for people to believe that, but I mean, we see it all the time. Scientifically, it is proven. If you take a seed and you plant it into the earth, it rots for it to regeminate. And scientifically, the process of rotting is a process of dying. So life can come out of that.
But in turn, you know, your very profound themes here, because this novel is about one king who is terrified of death, and he's trying to find immortality through materialism and through greed. And so, in many respects, this is the serpent's lie to Eve and to us, that we can live forever and become like gods.
Exactly.
And so, your overall message is belief in God and not to fear death.
Yeah, it is true. Because, I mean, in life you realize it, the people that have the strongest faith have less fear of death. It just happens like that. When you have a stronger faith in God and you believe that after you die you're going to God, then death stops being such a great, you know, thing. I mean, you don't have so much fear of death anymore. And I think that fear of death is one of the reasons why people spend so much time trying to cover things up with materialism. You know what I mean? I mean, if people are less material, I think it is because they realize that whether you have 20 million or you have 0, it doesn't matter. Everybody goes out the same way, you know.
Akko, another very fascinating theme in your novel that struck me is that one of the characters came to the realization that life is ultimately a contest between love and fear. There's a collision between fear and love. What does that mean? How did you come to that?
I have had a few experiences where I found myself doing things that were either motivated by fear and things that were motivated by love. And I had the opportunity to see the difference and the effect on myself, you know. And because of that, I arrived at the conclusion that almost everything we do is based on either fear or love, you know. Because these are things that would propose people to take action. Fear actually is used a lot, especially in control of masses. You know, we see that a lot. But I think love, which is even more powerful, is not so obvious. But if you look at it, people always walk from these two places. It's either from love or it's either from fear.
And I think that as Christians, Akko, when we are in fear, it means there's a lack of love because there's a lack of faith.
I agree.
And so when we're in fear, it means we're lacking faith. And if we're lacking faith, we're lacking a closeness to the divine force.
That's very true.
Right?
That's very true.
So I caught on to your novel a little bit.
Yes, you did. You did.
Akko, your father's books played quite a role in your life. There are hints in your novel that you would not have become an artist or a cartoonist if you didn't see your father's books when you were young. Two-folded question. Talk about your dad's books and how they influenced you when you were little, because it's fascinating how our talents grow from even the littlest influences in our childhood. But in your book, there's also art. Why is art so important in telling a story, and not just in words? Sorry for the loaded question.
It's okay. My father was a seeker after knowledge. You know, he basically educated himself, and the minute he started making some money, he used a lot of his money just to buy books. And so by the time I was born, there were lots of books in my father's house. And as a little child growing up, I always had access to these books. You know, I would be going through the pages. I remember we had a set of the Encyclopedia Americana. I spent a ton of time going through those books. And the only thing my father would tell me is, be careful, do not tear any pages. Just go through them, and when you're done, put them back.
Akko, I want to very quickly go here because we have 3 minutes, and I want to pick your fascinating brain under 20 seconds, please. Why is art so important? Because I want to get to two other themes.
I think that art is very, very important because unlike words, everybody can understand art. It is truly universal. It doesn't matter what culture you come from or what part of the world you come from. Art is a universal language.
Mm-hmm. And it can reach any human.
It can reach anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Ako, we don't have the time here, but you've experienced quite a past, which includes some pain inflicted on you by totalitarian, authoritarian forces. Your novel also has a strong theme of the importance of forgiveness. I want to ask you this. Have you forgiven those who have hurt you and your family and your nation? And why is forgiveness important?
I have forgiven a lot of people. There are some I still struggle with. But in as much as I struggle with it, I know that the only option I have is to forgive them. And sometimes I am doing it not because of them, but because of who I am. Because somebody said something. Not forgiving is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So forgiveness is something which is not just good for the other person. I think it is best for us to forgive, you know?
Ako, do you have time in your spare life to be a therapist in your time? Because maybe I would like to come and talk to you a little bit. Are you a part-time therapist?
Well, it so happens that I have done art therapy at a recovery home.
I might come and see you to discuss some very powerful philosophical questions and my own questions. Before we go, why the vision of a blind king?
Because this person who is not actually the king, you know, he is a very powerful man. He happens to be the high priest. But he sees himself as a king because somehow he has reached an agreement with some powers that have given him a measure of immortality. But then the vision that he has for himself and for the world is based on pride, and so he is blinded. And so he has a vision, but he is blind without knowing that he is blind.
Because pride blinds us.
Pride is very blinding.
Ako, what an honor and a pleasure to have such a wise philosopher at our table at the Glazov gang. Thank you very much. Where can people get the vision of the blind king? Because they need to read it.
Thank you very much.
Where should they go?
They can get it on Amazon.
Okay. Do you have a site you'd like to tell?
Yes, they can go to www.thevisionoftheblindking.com.
You're an A+ guy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am honored to be here.
It was an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Get the vision of the blind king, read it, and then visit Ako's site to give him some feedback. And we'll see you very soon on the Glazov gang. Good night.